Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Next, we've got Logan Williams, aka the Indie Wolverine, coming, and he does PR and marketing strategy for all sorts of indie games. And he's going to be outlining why you should be using a competitive analysis to improve your marketing strategy. And so, with that, Logan, it's all yours.
Sweet. So welcome everyone to my talk. Super excited to give it. Gonna be a lot of great information here, so we're gonna be moving pretty quick. But yeah, with that being said, we're gonna dive right in. So talk, as you can see here, is titled "Using Competitive Analysis to Improve Your Marketing Strategy." And before we jump in here, I feel like we need to kind of just establish how dope Canada is. It brings us poutine. I mean, who doesn't love that? It's brought us Hawaiian pizza. And really, honestly, if there's one thing to take away from this entire talk, it's that Hawaiian pizza is not even Hawaiian. It's from Canada. It's from Ontario, Canada. Can it get any better? Well, yeah, it can, because it also is the headquarters of Kit Fox Games. Super dope indie studio. They've worked on games like Moon Hunters, Shrouded Isle, and they're currently working on the sword dating simulator Boyfriend Dungeon. All super cool stuff. But really, a couple of things about Canada is that they've brought us two completely electric artists. One of them being the alternative rock band Bare Naked Ladies, and the other one is singer-songwriter and actress Avril Lavigne. Now, what do these two people have in common? Well, these two artists can be quoted as saying it's all been done before in their songs. Bare Naked Ladies did it in their hit single, It's All Been Done, before, and Avril Lavigne did it in her equal banger of a song, Complicated. Now, while this is, words of wisdom, words to live by, right? Well, they also serve as the foundation of this entire talk today. So I want to take you back to a simpler time in life. And that time is 2015. It may not seem that long ago, but I'm ready to, if you're ready to feel old along with me, that's where we're going to go on this journey. So in 2015, Hideo Kojima, for a brief moment, was still a member of Konami. Think about that. Let that settle in. It's not that long ago, but it kind of was. Grand Theft Auto 5 had just released on the Xbox 360, 2 significant generations ago. Also in 2015, I just left my third job in 12 months, and I like to consider that my internal triple crown. Now, the reason why I bring up 2015 is because it was the first year that I started within the video game industry as a marketing professional. And in 2015, when I started, you can see right here on this graph, this is number of games released on Steam, the most popular PC distribution platform in the world. And at the time in 2015, when I started, there were 2,964 games released on the platform. I mean, that looks pretty crazy. And the other thing is, like, I started in 2015. If you only go back a couple years prior to that, you're not even at 1,000 yet. So it, at the time, seemed like, man, this is super competitive. I mean, this is 57 games a week that we've got to compete with on this platform. This is unreal. Well, it's because Steam Greenlight. At the time, there was a more curated process of getting your game on Steam. You put your game page on Steam, and then users or players would go vote. And if your game was in the top 100, then you would get consideration and eventually approval by Steam to release your game on their platform. And now in 2017, if we move forward 2 years, only 2 years later, Steam introduced Steam Direct, replacing Steam Greenlight. Now, what this means is really where we're at today, which is if you have $100, you can get your game on Steam. So it really lowered the barrier to entry to an all-time low. And as a result, you can see right here, you can see this monstrous increase in games that had released on the platform in 2017 and the year after in 2018. It really pissed off Vegeta. He's breaking his headset because of it. And that amounts, if you go based off of that 2018 number, that amounts to be about 174 games a week, which is pretty incredible, which is 34.8 games a day, almost 35 games a day. And if you go back to 2015, we're looking at about 35, or we were looking at about 57 games a week, and you only go forward a handful of years, and we're looking at almost 35 games a day. It's pretty incredible. And now if we move forward to 2020, we're getting close to current day here. In 2020, we're looking at over 10,000 games released on Steam. And while 2019, there was a little bit of a dip, there's been a big rebound, and we're back on a steady increase here. And we're looking at over 10,000 games on Steam. And now you may think, when you look at this graph, holy crap, discoverability, this is unreal. How are we going to get our game found? Solid question, I guess. You may think, all right, we're gonna have to cut our prices. We're gonna have to like go bottom of the barrel with our pricing to compete. But see, when I look at this graph, that's not what I don't see these hurdles necessarily. I see money when I look at this graph. I see Bitcoin when I look at this graph. I see Doge when I look at this graph. I see a lot of value, basically, is what I'm trying to say here, metaphorically speaking. So in reality, what I see when I look at this graph and how many games are releasing each year on the most popular PC distribution platform in the world, I see data. I see a ton of information. And you see, this is where I'm a glass half full kind of guy. So when I see all of these games out and about in this competition that's going on, I want to find ways that we can turn it on its head and we can get value out of that. And the value that we can get out, one of the ways that we can get value out of this, one of a few, is competitive analysis. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Now, if you Google competitive analysis, you might stumble on a HubSpot article. Their content ranks really well, so it'd probably be one of the first search results that you'd find that would describe competitive analysis. And they describe it as competitive analysis is a strategy where you identify, and I underline this, and we're going to touch on this later, where you identify major competitors in research. Again, we'll touch on that later. Research their products, sales, and marketing strategies. By doing this, you can create solid business strategies that improve upon your competitors. Super solid stuff. Now you see underlined products, sales, and marketing strategies. Competitive analysis, depending on how you do it, you may cover all of that, but that's not what I'm asking you to do today. And now, again, going back to competitive analysis, you may have heard of the term SWOT, SWOT. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And if you've heard of it before, you may have seen something like this, a SWOT analysis in a spreadsheet. Again, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And now, there is a benefit of going through a SWOT analysis, and you can absolutely get a ton of value out of it. However, if you're an independent studio and you don't have a ton of people to work on certain things, or maybe you're focusing on one particular avenue of competitive analysis and not everything. Maybe you're not necessarily worried about the product and where you stack among the competition. Again, as it relates to your product, maybe you're more interested in marketing strategies. Well, that's all good. You see, I'm anti doing something like a SWOT analysis simply because everyone else does it, or you hear someone like myself tell you to do it. I'm all about purposeful analysis. I'm all about purposeful work. You see, I want you to work with purpose and do things for a reason, because if you don't, the process is not going to be very efficient. You're going to go about it in a mind-numbing fashion, and the results are not going to be that great, let alone actionable. So that's why I want you to work with purpose. And for the purpose of this talk, the objective that I have for competitive analysis is market and sell more effectively. That's what we're going to touch on today, is that little sliver of competitive analysis. So with that in mind, we need to think about what data, how can we identify key data points that we can start to analyze with among our competition. So for this talk and this example, I'm going to focus on Steam because there's a little bit more data more publicly available to us. But when you follow along, if you're working on a mobile title or a title on consoles, the process is very similar. You're just really trying to, the data sources that you're going to go to are going to be different. You're just going to be gathering different data. So it's worth it to stick around here. So again, our objective is to market and sell more effectively. So Steam wish lists, that's one key data point that you could say is valid in identifying how a competitive game is marketing and selling successfully, or projecting to sell successfully, because wish lists, they're an indicator of purchase intent. So when somebody goes through a Steam page and they add it to a wish list, they're basically saying, I'm interested in potentially buying this game. As when you add a game to a wish list, you're getting notified when it goes on sale and when it releases. So it's all about pricing with wish lists. So that's that purchase intent. And that could be a very interesting data point to use for our competitive analysis. The problem is wish lists are private. That's not publicly available data. So we have to scrap that idea. Is there anything else out there that we may be able to use as the key data source for our competitive analysis? Well, on Steam, there is, and that's followers. You see, followers, it's not necessarily an indicator of purchase intent, but it is an indicator of interest. So giving the option, which all users of Steam are given, they have the option to add a game to wishlist, game that they intend on potentially purchasing in the future, or they can follow the game, which when you follow a game on Steam, that means that you're signing up for announcements and news as it relates to the game that you're following. So this is the next best thing to a wish list. And followers are public, so this is perfect. So the competitive analysis that we're going to do, the goal is to identify activities that result in an increase in followers on Steam. Followers, we've identified as the key data point that we're going to use to identify if a game is marketing and selling their game or setting their game up to sell successfully. And so we want to cherry pick the activities along the production of a video game that have increased follower count on Steam. So real quick, I want to shout out another marketing specialist in the industry, Chris Zukowski, and you can find him on Twitter at Adventure Mountain, and his website is howtomarketagame.com, and he's my competition in a way, but it's healthy. And also, I've been doing competitive analysis for a long time, in various forms of competitive analysis for a very long time, and I relied heavily on Google when I started, or earlier on in my competitive analysis days. But earlier this year, I stumbled on Chris Zukowski's How to Spy on Your Competition blog post, and he kind of opened the doors to Steam database, which is something we'll touch on in a moment. But that drastically changed my way of doing competitive analysis with Steam games. So I wanted to give him a quick shout out for showing that off, and that's what we're going to touch on right now. So without further ado, we can go ahead and get started. So actionable example one, actionable, I put this slide in here because when you look up how to give a good talk, it says one, talk about Canada, and two, talk about actionable things that listeners and viewers can do the moment that your presentation is over. So this is exactly what that is. So again, we're going to identify low-hanging fruit opportunities to increase followers on Steam. So first, we need to identify. Remember, I underlined identify under HubSpot's description of competitive analysis. Before you can even do a competitive analysis, you need to identify who the competition is. So what I like to do is go to GameDataCrunch.com. However, you can go to Steam and you can filter by tag and genre and go about it that way. But Game Data Crunch is something I like to use personally, just because it's super easy to use. And there are a lot of different ways that you can filter and sort by. So what I look for, and again, you can do this different, but what I do and what I recommend doing is finding a genre match, a game that matches your game within top level genre. A game that's either released within the past 12 months or has yet to release. We want relevant, not only do we want relevant data, but we're trying to collect up-to-date data. The industry moves very fast, as you can see with earlier graphs, and we want to get information that is pretty darn up to date. We also want to find filter games by accurate price model. We want to find competition that's pricing their game in a similar fashion that we are. So if you're working on a paid-to-play game, you're not necessarily going to be looking at competition for marketing insights that are working on a free-to-play game or a game as a service type game. So you want to look at accurate price model, more of a one-to-one match to yours. But most importantly, and that's why I bolded this in red, is visual style with 3 exclamation points. Visual style is key, and we're going to get into that in a moment. But if you look at this game database screenshot here, you can see at the very top the filters that I've used. So I've looked at games that have already released that are paid to play games and have released in the year 2020 single player RPG indie. So I'm looking at this from the lens of any given independent studio that's working on a single player RPG game. And this would be the kind of filters that you'd want to do on the Game Discovery Co. website or on Steam or really anywhere else that you want to look up competition. Now it's time to put on our gamer glasses or look at games from the lens of a gamer. And I hate that I just use that term gamer, but whatever. So what I mean by this is after you've put together, you've put together your combination of filters to identify the right competition for your game, you want to look at their actual game page. It can be Steam, it can be Epic Game Store, it can be Xbox, anywhere really. And we're going to look at it through the lens of the consumer. And what we want to find are overlaps. So visual style is a big one because when someone looks on Steam, more times than not, the first thing they look at is this. They don't see this, they look at this. Their eyes are drawn right down to the screenshots. And you would think, well, it's going to be the trailer, it's going to be the video because that auto plays in the background. But a lot of games have terrible trailers that start out with not gameplay. And that's really what people want to see is gameplay. Just show me the gameplay. So eyes are drawn down naturally to the screenshots. And I'm not saying this out of my hypothesis. I'm saying this out of data. If you go back to Chris Zukowski, How to Market a Game, his website, he did a GDC talk a few years ago where he actually watched people live go on Steam and just naturally click around on games. And then he started to just identify trends and where their eyes went, where they went first when they were in the consideration phase of making a purchase. And this kind of follows that kind of pattern. So again, eyes are drawn down to the screenshots. You want to see gameplay, you want to see UI elements, or you want to see the UI, and so on and so forth. We just want to get to the meat of it, right? Next up is the eyes are drawn then over to tags. And it's not to identify positive tags, it's to identify disqualifier tags. So if you're looking at, if you want to purchase a game and you want to try out a roguelite game, you want it to be single player and you don't want to play a big MMO roguelite. If you look over at the tags and you saw MMO, then that would be a disqualifier for you. So that's why you see players' eyes go down to the screenshots, they click through those, they move on over to tags to find disqualifiers. And then next up, they'll go to the review score if you have one. If you're not released yet, the eyes go right up to the short description. And then they scroll down and they may look at the rest of the Steam page, but really for the most part, they'll scroll down and then they have their, this is where the indicators of purchase intent or interest, or they just kind of move on. That's where that happens. But we want to keep this in mind when you're looking for the perfect games that you want to match up as the competition to your game. If you're working on a third-person shooter, that doesn't necessarily mean that Destiny is your competition. You want to look at games that fit within genre, within tag, within price model, and then you want to go to their Steam page and then see if I'm looking at this through the lens of a gamer, does this game show me, does my game would it look like on the top layer, just in screenshot form? Would it be something that would have overlapping interest? All right, now we want to document key data. So you've identified the competition, and the next move, obviously, here is to document that information to get you set up for the research phase. So I put together a nice spreadsheet here, and I'm documenting a similar game. And in this talk, I'm going to do the Pedestrian indie puzzle game. And you can see here, I've got columns for key moments, pre-launch, date, followers gained, key moments post-launch, so on and so forth. These are this is key information that is only valuable to the competitive analysis that we're doing. So we're trying to identify spikes in followers along the production of a video game. So we want to find pre-launch spikes because those are ones that we can pluck and then apply to our marketing strategy pre-launch. And we want to see post-launch opportunities as well. So that's why I've separated the two. So now we want to go on to the research phase. This is where the whole meat of the deal is. So we would go to, for this example, we're going to do Steam. So we would go to Steam database. I think it's steamdatabase.info. Super awesome website, tons of data. And I'm about to show you what I mean by that. So go to Steam database. This is the home page. You go up to the search bar. search the similar game to yours, one of the many that you've documented at this point. So we're going to use the pedestrian for example here. You click on the game, scroll down to where you see on the sidebar, left sidebar, Steam charts. You click on Steam charts and you want to scroll down. There's going to be a few charts. You want to scroll down till you see Steam Gamehub follower chart. And look at how dope this chart is. This is literally public data for the follower count that the pedestrian had along the production cycle of the game over, I mean, you can go past year, 3 years, or all time. And then that REL that you see in there, that stands for release. That stands for the official release of the game, not early access release, but the official release of the game. So you have a quick visual cue there to identify pre-launch and post-launch. So what we want to do is identify abnormal spikes of followers that don't follow the normal trend upward. We want to find those little judders, like this one right here. And what we want to do when we find these little judders, these little peaks, is we want to isolate the date there. And you can do that. You can click on it, hover over it, and isolate it. And then it'll look like this. See here, November 1st to November, through November 16th, I believe. And then you can get a much more clear picture of the increase in followers. So we see here on November 9th, 2019, the pedestrian had 3,085 followers. On November 10th, that went up to 3,200 followers. That was a significant increase in followers relative to the days prior and the days after. So we want to figure out at this point, what did they do? What happened to give us this increase in followers? So this is fun stuff here. So we want to put on our detective caps and get to work. So good places to start is go to the Steam page, go to the Steam store page, scroll down and look at the social links that the developer includes on their page, look at their news tab, look at their update history. These are areas where you can go by date and try to identify what did they do, what happened on this date to jump the follower count up. We're being detectives at this point. So I started with the pedestrian by going to their news section. I scrolled down in the news section and I got to November and thought, yes, I found it. But as you can see here, November 30th, there was an official release date trailer. That doesn't help us because that's after November 10th. That's pretty far after November 10th. So that's not the cause of the spike. Then I looked at October 31st. It's closer to November 10th, but still a ways out. And that was an official teaser. So that doesn't make any sense here. So we're confused. That's why there's a question mark and we're in red and it's bold. So the next move that I made was go to the Twitter page and then I struck gold. So when I went to the Twitter page, you scroll down on the developer's Twitter page, and if they're as active as the team behind the pedestrian is, you see on November 11th, just one day later than our spike date, we see that they retweeted Intel Gaming when they tweeted about Day of the Devs. And they shared their 4 favorite games from Day of the Devs. So at this moment, I think I found it, but I need to just do a little bit more work to just validate that this is the right date. So I went to Double Fine Productions, who puts together Day of the Devs. I went to their YouTube channel, and then they had a trailer for Day of the Devs. And as you can see here, Day of the Devs took place on November 10th. So, bingo, we got it, nailed it down. And you can see here, it was an in-person event in San Francisco, free admission of all ages. And there were over 70 games at this event. And the pedestrian was one of those games. Now, Day of the Devs participation, we see that it equaled 115 new followers. That's pretty dope, but that might not sound like a lot to you. However, followers, there is a correlation between followers and wish lists on Steam. So we can have a little bit of fun here. So we're about to get into funsies time. We're going to take a little detour to make this process a little bit more interesting and fun for all of you that are watching and listening. And what's fun for me is doing estimates and applying a dollar amount to that estimate so I can see exactly how much money I might be making based off of the actions that I take. So this is pretty dope. If you look here on gamasutra.com, Simon Carlos of Game Discovery Co. newsletter, by the way, shout out to that newsletter. It's a ton of excellent free information. They also have a paid bit there, but you can make that judgment call after you've checked it out. They focus on discoverability within PC games and console games as well. But Simon Carlos put together this blog touching on how Steam followers and wish list relate. I'm not going to go over the whole entire blog because there are variables to this. But as you can see here in bold, when he looked at a bunch of games on Steam, he got this data from the developers themselves so he could validate the actual wish lists. He came to the conclusion that the average multiplier of follower to wish list was 9.64 and the median was 9.6. Now, again, there were variables. For example, if a game participated in Steam festivals that have been happening a lot over the last year or two, the multiplier between follower and wish list was higher. And also if there was a pre-release showcase, so if they had a publisher that ran a publisher sale and then also shared, kind of plugged their game before it launched, again, any wish list earned from that would be a higher multiplier from followers to wish list. But for simplicity purposes, we're going to focus on that 9.6 median number because this is funsies time. And so if we take the 115 followers gained from Day of the Dev participation, which again, that was a one-day event, that results in an estimated total number of wish list of 1,104 followers, or wish list rather, in a day. It's kind of nuts. Now we're going to have some more funsies, and we can do a further estimate based off of data directly from Steam. Now they say on average games convert 19% of wish list ads within a year to a sale. Now, as you can see on this graph, that's a wild swing. So your game's probably not going to be close to the average. You could be far below, far above, who knows? But again, this is funsies time. We're trying to make this process exciting. So if we wanted to take those wish lists at the estimated wish list total of 1,104 and then multiply that by 19%, then we can estimate how many sales in the first year of release the Pedestrian had that would stem back to that one day of the devs participation. So if we do that, we see 115 acquired followers from Day of the Dev participation that resulted in roughly 1,104 wish lists. Those wish lists total estimate here, converted to 209.76 sales in year one. Extra funsies time. This is the last time I'm going to use that term. If we want to apply a number to this, then we have to get the price of the game and then take out Steam's 30%. So the Pedestrian is a $20 game. You take out 30%, and then you're left with $13.99 that the developer sees. Granted, they don't have a publisher or anything else going on. We're not going to factor in taxes, but we're looking at $13.99 per sale. So if we take that $13.99 per sale and multiply that by the estimated 209.76 units sold in year one, we're looking at $2,935.17 for participating in Day of the Devs for one day. I mean, and they were one of 70 games to do it. That seems pretty exciting to me. And that would be something that I would pull from this analysis and put right into our marketing strategy as something that we need to participate in moving forward, is any Day of the Devs events. So going back to our original objective here, what activities result in significant increases in followers that we can do ourselves? Well, pre-launch, I went through the process of looking at all the little jutters, all the little spikes on that followers graph on Steam database. And I was able to attribute those followers pre-launch to Day of the Devs participation. There was a moment where the developers updated their Steam page and changed the tag order, the tags on their page. They changed the order of it, and that resulted in an additional 12 followers gained. And then they took part in a screenshot Saturday. And at the time, same day on January 4th, 2020, they created a new reviewer build of the Pedestrian on Steam. So I wasn't able to find an exact reasoning for that 14 follower gain, but it looks like it was a combination of screenshot Saturday visibility on Twitter and also them sending out review builds to a bunch of people. So we'll look at them individually one by one real quick. Going to burn through it. Steam page facelift. How did I get that information? Well, I went to Steam database. I went to the Steam charts. I saw the jutter. I zoomed in on the dates to see the increase in followers. And as you can see right here, it's tiny, but it's still a jutter. So we saw a little tiny bump, and I wanted to figure out why that was. I went to their Twitter page. I scrolled down to the date, and I found that they were saying that the developer literally said, hey, we just updated our Steam page. Pretty dope. But then you can go to Steam database, scroll down, click on history, and it shows you all the changes that happen on a Steam page in the moment that they happen. It's all saved there. So I was able to scroll down onto September 11th, 2019, and you see there's a handful of changes here that they made to the store description. You can see on September 11th that they changed their user tags. They changed only the order of them, but then they did it again on September 13th, and that's where our judder was. So it looks like the combination of them updating the content of the Steam page and then also kind of locking in the preferred order of tags resulted in a nice little quick bump in Steam followers. And as we previously saw, there is an equation between Steam followers and wish lists. So they no doubt gained a good bit of wish lists from those changes. So that's something to keep in mind when you're leading up to your game's release. Get in there, update the content of the screenshots, make it look as awesome as you possibly can, and then tweak your tag order, because it does make a difference in terms of exposure and then also conversions to follows and wish lists. Now we can look at Screenshot Saturday and the review build submissions. Again, there's a question mark here because I wasn't able to just put a stamp on it, but I felt okay with passing it on because it was only 14 followers gained. And I think I nailed it, but I wasn't 100% sure. But again, I started my search by going to the Pedestrians Twitter feed. I saw on January 4th that they added in a new feature to the game. The game was not out yet, but this is a Screenshot Saturday video showing the new feature that was out of the game. It looked really cool. So it ended up getting them 70 likes, 12 retweets. So a little bit of additional exposure. Not a ton, but just a little bit. And then I went down to Steam database and looked at the history of the page, and I saw on the very same day that they added an app, or that they added a reviewer build to their page. So I have a suspicion that this is the reasoning. I also went to Google and looked up earned media coverage to see if they did like a feature or preview build or alpha or whatever. There was nothing on January 4th. So you want to do your due diligence and check everywhere. Check social media feeds, check the Steam news page, check Steam database, and try to lock it all down. And if all else fails, check Google and look for earned media coverage. And you can also check Google for events, industry events like Steam sales, but that'll be reflected on Steam database as well. And we'll get to that in a moment. So pre-launch, what did we gather here doing this simple competitive analysis that we were able to do in a half hour tops? We were able to lock in that Day of the Devs participation is a great low-hanging fruit way to increase your followers and wish lists, and eventually year one sales a good amount by participating in that event. Super dope, right? Steam page tag edits. We were able to see that changes within Steam page, the Steam page itself and the tag ordering resulted in an increase in exposure and followers and wish lists. Screenshot Saturday participation, again, that one maybe not as much, but it might be the review submission that kind of did it there. But I wanted to throw Screenshot Saturday in there just as, we kind of all know that it's something worth doing, as it could blow up and get you extra additional visibility for a little work. Post-launch, this is the other columns of this spreadsheet. If we look at post-launch here, we can see that Steam Daily Deal. This was a big one. Look at how many followers were gained on the Steam Daily Deal participation relative to participating pre-launch with Day of the Devs. 704. That's a ton. Just think about how many wish lists that converted to. So Steam Daily Deal, how did I find that? Again, Steam charts, big judder, and I focused in on the date. March 16th was prior to the big increase. March 17th was when it started to, that's when the initial peak happened. So I went to their Twitter page to see what happened, and then boom, the pedestrian literally tweeted about participating in Steam's Daily Deal. It was 25% off. And then also I was able to validate this by going to prices within Steam database, and it shows you historic price changes for any game. So I was able to validate this, that yes, on March 16th, the game was discounted by 25%, and that was for the daily deal. So Steam summer sale discount, again, this happened between June 25th and July 9th. Another big follower game, 933 at this point. It's pretty significant. Now you can see, again, I saw the jitter on the overall Steam follower chart, and I was able to kind of zoom in on when it started. And you can see it started on June 25th, and it started to level out on July 9th. So pretty clear as day that something happened that wasn't just one day of activity, it was over a few days. So again, Twitter worked like a charm for this game. the developer tweeted that they took part in the Steam Summer Sale and that the discount was 30% off. And again, I was able to validate that price change by going to the price section on Steam database to see that, yes, it was indeed discounted by that percentage for that literal duration of time. So you can validate the work through Steam database if you can't validate it through social media. Also, GDEX Expo, never heard of it, but it worked for the Pedestrian. It got them 72 additional followers on October 10th. Again, look at here on this the overview Gamehub follower chart. You see there's a tiny one. You got to kind of really zoom in there, but it was worth investigating. And then I looked at the Twitter page again, the Pedestrian. They kind of document every time they're gonna increase in followers. They document it on their social. It's pretty dope. We see they won 3 awards at the GDEX Gaming Expo, and that was the reasoning. That's what happened. That's what jumped up their followers to 72. Lastly, here post-launch, porting your game from PC to console. This will do wonders in driving up your followers. I mean, look at that, 1,383 followers gained. That happens from media attention that you gain. They brought their game to PS4 and PS5. They got covered by IGN, GameSpot, all the big sites. On top of that, they coupled it with a sale on Steam, as you should if you port your game to a new console. And they used an exposure. I would assume they used an exposure round on Steam to maximize the discount that they did on Steam. This is something also, if you're going to bring your game over to Game Pass, 100% discount your game on Steam and use an exposure round to take advantage of that. There's so much data publicly that shows that if your game's added on services like Game Pass, you'll see an increase, a spike in sales on other platforms, specifically PC. But as we see here, this worked for the Pedestrian, and we can validate this by going to price. They ran a sale starting January 29th, which was literally the day that they released the Pedestrian on PS4 and PS5, and they dropped it 30%. And then again, just to validate it, I pulled up their release date announcement trailer on their official YouTube channel, and boom, January 29th, that's when it released. That's when they did a sale on Steam, and that's why they earned a ton of additional followers and wishlist and sales on Steam. So to recap on post-launch stuff that we were able to grab, and this is just one game. Imagine doing this for like 10 or 20 games. It doesn't take long to do, and you just pluck in stuff that has proven to work. Post-launch for the Pedestrian, Steam Daily Deal participation, that works. Steam seasonal sale participation, again, it's proven to work. GDEX Expo, basically post-launch event participation, yes, you should be doing it. I mean, a lot of this can go unsaid, but really when you're doing this process to identify things that you're validating things that go unsaid, and then also you're identifying things that you didn't think about before. But really, post-launch, yes, submit your game to all the events that you can after you release your game, and before, obviously. Console port plus coupling that with a Steam sale and utilizing an exposure round on Steam. Yes, it's going to drive up your wish list, your followers. It's going to convert to a ton of sales and all that good stuff. We kind of already knew that, but this is validation when you do competitive analysis. Kind of dope. Now, second actionable example, and I know we were probably getting close to pushing this. So I'm going to be, again, short and sweet. Our original objective for this competitive analysis, this form of competitive analysis, there are many forms of competitive analysis. This one is to market and sell more effectively. That's what we want to do. We just ran through a process of competitive analysis to identify spikes in followers for PC games on Steam that we can grab and then pluck and use in our own marketing strategy pre-launch and post-launch. Because as we saw through estimates, that's real world dollars that we're seeing when we do those things. Now, to market and sell more effectively, what else can we do to better market, better earn exposure for our game and sell more copies of our game? Well, identify Twitch streamers that are great fit for our game. That'll help for sure, right? We all kind of know this. Excuse me for a second. All right, so to identify Twitch streamers that are a great fit for your game, super easy process. I mean, I can't stress how easy this is because of the existence of Sully Gnome. Now, again, when you're doing competitive analysis, you have to identify the competition. We're not going to do that right now because we've already identified it as the Pedestrian for this talk. But when you're doing it yourself, again, identify the right competition before you begin your competitive analysis. It's kind of common sense, but That's what you got to do. Then we want to document key data. This data is key data. It's going to be different from the follower spreadsheet that I put together because we're focusing on Twitch streamers now. So things that I like to look at when I'm looking for Twitch streamers are language. Do they speak in the language that our game supports? Kind of day one stuff, right? And followers. That's another one. I like to put my streamers and influencers essentially into tiers, and I like to put them into tiers by follower count, just to see how much. It's a nice way to get a quick snapshot of the different types of streamers and the different types of exposure that we can potentially get. So followers are essentially the influence that the influencers have, right? They influence an audience to be able to make purchase decisions. So the larger their audience is, the more influence they have, and you can officially call them influencers. Stream time. This is another one where for me, I look at it as an indicator of interest in a game, and I understand there are variables that come into play, especially if it's a sponsored stream. Then yeah, they're going to play it for a predetermined number of hours or time. But if I'm looking up a game on Silly Gnome that we'll get to in a moment, if I'm looking for the right streamers for my games, I'm trying to make people's day. I'm trying to make people happy. I'm not trying to spam streamers with, hey, check out my random game that I don't even know if you like or not, but I know that if you play it, I get a lot of value out of that. That's not the game I'm interested in. I want to make everyone happy. I mean, look at this mustache. So what I want to do is identify potential indicators of interest in a game. So if I see that a streamer played a lot of a similar game to ours, and then I do it, and then through my competitive analysis, and I'm looking at other games, I see, man, they also played this game and this game. And then I'm getting a quick snapshot of, all right, I think they like those games. So I feel pretty good about putting them on my list to send our game to. Followers gained while playing similar game. This one's kind of iffy, but I do like to include it because it is something I like to just kind of take a look at. And basically what followers gained while playing similar game is exactly what that is. It's when they're streaming a certain game, and we'll say it's a similar game, it's a competitive game, we can see the followers gained or lost relative to their normal streams and how many followers they gain or lose playing any other game. I like to look at this because I also not only want to find streamers that are a good fit for my games, but I also want to find streamers that influence an audience that would be interested in viewing a similar game to the one that I'm pitching them. Again, I'm trying to make everybody happy. I'm trying to do the whole win-win-win situation for everybody. So an increase in followers while streaming similar game relative to normal follower increase during streams could indicate that a game resonated with that audience particularly well. But again, there are a ton of variables that go into play here. Maybe the streamer just had a bad day and they weren't very entertaining, and they didn't gain as many followers as they normally do. Maybe they just needed a little bit of extra coffee, like I've got right here, if you couldn't already tell. Watch time, that's another one. I want to get as much exposure for the games that I'm pitching as possible. Watch time is a good way of seeing that exposure in a quick key data point. So these are the things that I like to look for when I'm looking up potential Twitch streamers or streamers in general for the games that I'm working on. So again, Sully Gnome, super dope website, free. All of this is free, by the way. Sully Gnome, you go to the website, that's the homepage, go to the search bar up at the top right, search the game. Again, we're following the pedestrian. Then I like to go to most watched. There's a most watched tab. Once you go on the game page, it's right there. Click on that. Then I want to sort by, I want to look at dates. I don't want to look at the last 7 days because more times than not, I'm looking at indie games that they had a little peak in streamers playing their games, but it wasn't like Fortnite where it's just kind of, it's just a lot at all times, or Among Us, whatever's hot nowadays with the kids. You click on, I click on more, and then I clicked on the year 2020 because I want to see out of the year 2020 who were all of the most watched streamers that played the pedestrian in all of 2020. And then I go to language and I select English, and then I select the results drop down. You see over there on the right, it says 100. That's the max that you can get. I like to scroll down, click on 100, so I get all the listings that I can look at. Then, and you can see it up here in the top right, you have links for CSV and Excel. You can export this. Again, super dope. This is all free. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing. But you click on CSV or Excel and you'll get a spreadsheet like this. Now, with this spreadsheet, I don't like to stop here. There's still some work to do, and this is where my tiers come into play when I talk about followers. And I like to group them up into tiers of nano, micro, macro, and mega. Nano being 1,000 to 10,000 followers, micro 10,001 to 100,000. I'm not going to keep saying this, but you can see right here. They're grouped. There are tiers. And the result ends up being this. You see that there's a new column that I put in there for tier. I like to put in the exact tier that the streamer is in, and then I like to color code it so I can quickly get a snapshot image of the different tiers of streamer. And then I also like to color match the follower gained column while playing similar game. And if you do this with enough games, you can do it with one game if you want and get a spreadsheet of 100 Twitch streamers, but I would advise doing it for more than one game. Go in there and then identify. I look for duplicates. I want to see duplicates. I want to see that X streamer played 5 out of 6 games that I researched. That's awesome that it's showing that there's consistency there, that yes, they're playing similar games. So that's awesome. So then when you go to filter this list, the ones that have duplicate listings there because they played other similar games, those are ones that you create a new column for and you put in the notes. They've played 5 out of 6 or 4 out of 7, whatever it is, just so you can get a quick snapshot image of, yep, they played a lot of similar games to ours. So that's the note with this spreadsheet is Sully Gnome doesn't give you email addresses, as they shouldn't. So this is the manual process that you need to go through. Sully Gnome gives you a lot of great information, and it gives it to you very quickly. It's your job to go through and filter and sort that data however you like, and I've given you my recommendations a few slides ago. And then you need to take the remaining list. So you cut out, what I like to do is I like to remove all streamers that have followers under 1,000. They immediately get gone. They kick rocks. They could be dope people, but they're just not there yet. I get them out of the spreadsheet so I can narrow it down. It'll fill up quick. If you do 5 games, you'll have a super deep spreadsheet. So you want to really condense it as much as possible. And then the last column you want to add, or last few columns you want to add, are for contact information, contact details, name, and email address. And then that's where you'll manually go through. And that's where you do the eyeball test too, where you see, oh, this is an outlier. Like this streamer plays nothing but esports titles, and then on one random Saturday they threw this game into their rotation, but it's not normal. Then you remove them. So there's an element of manual process that happens at the end here. But I hope with this talk that more smarter people listening to this can make this process and all other processes of competitive analysis more efficient. So again, just to recap, what we did is we did competitive analysis, but we only did one sliver of it. You can do competitive analysis to identify many, many different insights as it relates to your product, the game, selling the game, and then the marketing of the game, and anywhere in between. You can do that. But I'm all about purposeful analysis because I fully understand that independent studios are, more times than not, smaller team size. They have less time. Everyone's wearing multiple hats. So be purposeful with the work that you do, and be purposeful with these competitive analysis, because you can gain, like I just showed at the beginning of this presentation, you can gain some dope insights, things that you can put into your marketing strategy right now, and you can do like 30 minutes tops. So that's my recommendation for you, and that is my thank you to you. And I'm Indy Wolverine. If you want to hit me up, I'm on Twitter at Indy Wolverine, and there's my website.
Awesome. All right, so we've got a load of questions on here.
Sweet.
All right, so first from Kristen Wheeler, what do you think about Jason Vanderberg's theory of matching gamers and games based on personality tests, like the Big Five?
So, I mean, I'm not fully I'm not quite sure. I don't know who Jason Vanderberg is or the theory, but I mean, matching people based on personality test, I'm sure that there's fun in going about that process, and you can probably get a lot of value out of that process. But still, at the end of the day, I mean, we all have a lot of variables going on when we want to play a game. So your personality, I would assume, doesn't necessarily 100% align to the type of game that you want to play from one moment to another. There are times where, yeah, I'll play Rocket League, but I don't like esports games. And then later on, like tomorrow, I'm like, oh, I want to play Final Fantasy. Like it's all over the place. So, but I mean, it's interesting, and I like there are tests like that happening, but I'm not quite sure what to do with that.
All right, next one from Kristen. Any thoughts on marketing games for the over 60 plus crowd? And then I'll skip over the whole conversation between me and Kristen on what you should refer to those people as. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, really, again, I like to go through my process of identifying the target market through competitive analysis, because I want to look at the product first. I want to look at games that have overlaps in that top layer, that visual style, because if you're just focusing on age, I think you're missing the mark. Like when I'm 60, I'm going to like some crazy games that most 60-year-olds are not going to like. I mean, if you're trying to really segment your audience by age, you might be missing a lot of potential players of other games. So, I mean, quick tip, I would say, maybe Facebook, that could be a platform for you. Maybe you want to focus on social media platforms that there's public data available to back that. Yes, people over the ages that fit within these age brackets, they typically use these platforms more than others. You can just Google it. I'm sure there are tons of publicly available data that'll validate that. But again, I really would focus more on the product and similar games, and then try to appeal to players that like those games. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be, a dude aged 65 that only that segment likes this game. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
So from CJ Kirshner, how much of this is just random luck?
I think random luck is, and not to be mean, but I think it could be kind of a cop-out. I think at the end of the day, you got to be making a dope game. None of this works if you don't make a good game. If you don't make a good game, it doesn't matter the magic wand you can wave. For example, I've done a lot of guerrilla marketing campaigns. I dressed up a bunch of people at GDC in werewolf outfits and pajama pants to promote a game. I created a dating website for the afterlife for a Kickstarter campaign. I've done some crazy stuff that actually earned national attention and just an overwhelming amount of exposure for the games that I worked on. Unfortunately, they weren't the best games in the world, which is why I threw that Hail Mary in terms of a guerrilla marketing campaign. It resulted in a ton of awareness, but that didn't necessarily convert into a ton of sales. So you've got to be working on a very good game. And then the next step, all it is identifying what still works today. What works in 2020, 2021, 2022? What can I do within my marketing strategy to get in front of gamers and then convert them into a sale?
So from G Swanee, any general tips for games that aren't or can't release on Steam?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, so I wanted to make a point at the beginning of this. I was focusing on Steam, but really it goes across the board. Competitive analysis is not something that, you only do with Steam. I showed that as an example, but really have a purposeful, you can have a purposeful analysis. You just have to identify key data points that are publicly available data points. And you can literally go to Google and just search, top Xbox games or, top iPhone apps, games and apps, and you can start to lock in key data points that aren't necessarily on Steam database, and you can utilize those publicly available data points to allow you to better implement strategies within your marketing, your overall marketing strategy. Another thing that you can do is just look up the similar games. This is what I did before Chris Zukowski's blog post. I would go to Google and I would use a combination of advanced search operators and search queries and filters to utilize Google and identify earned media. So I would search game title, and then I would lock in my dates using tools. In Google search, go to tools, and then you can put exact specific dates within Google search. I want results from X date to X, to Y date. And you can deconstruct a PR campaign doing it that way. And you can see, all right, when they announced that this game exists, these are all the media sites that covered that game. Well, then you scoop all those up and add them to your own media list, because those are sites that cover games that are similar to yours. And that's how you build a targeted media list. And that's how you start to shape your PR strategy moving forward. So there's low-hanging fruit all out there. You just have to identify similar games to yours and then go find that key data that's going to allow you to improve your marketing strategy.
So another one from Kristen, are these on a CPC model, and what's the average prices to gain followers?
No, and see, that's the beauty of everything that I do. I like to do everything for as low cost to free as possible, because I've been doing this for 5 years now, and I've worked with teams with literally no budget on a rev share deal. By the way, that's a terrible idea. Don't do that. And then other teams that have a ton of budget to where I didn't even know what I could do to fill the budget. But I try to focus on no cost solutions. So this is not cost per click. You're identifying what activities that other teams did, like participating in Day of the Devs. That's free. Like, you can submit your game to be a part of Day of the Devs. You can submit your game to be a part of these different expos and things of that nature. And also right now, this is perfect for you. I mean, the pandemic sucks. That's like, we all know this, but what it's resulted in is a lot of digital events. Digital means you don't have to spend money to travel to these expos. You don't have to pay for lodging at these expos. You can submit your game and pay a smaller fee or no fee, submit your game, earn nominations, get awards. Because the thing is, media, they cover these events, even if they're fully digital, and there's still exposure happening at these events. So take part in all of these. But again, just to answer your question, everything that I showed today, no CPC, no cost. You're just identifying, you're deconstructing marketing campaigns that happened with similar games to yours, and then you're plucking out what worked and you're implementing that in your own strategy.
All right, we got 5 minutes, so we can probably get in another one or two from CJ. Logan, what do you suggest when your competition is in a completely different league in terms of marketing funds and influence from where you are?
That's a good question, and I wanted to make a point in the talk about this, and I probably will for future talks. That is a big part of identifying your competition. Again, when I mentioned Destiny, if you're working on a third-person shooter, Destiny is not necessarily your competition, because another part of identifying your competition is scope. What is the scope of the game? Also, if you're looking at a game that was created by a team of veterans that have worked on many successful titles, then this is like their third or fourth release, and they've just been knocking out bangers, that's not your competition, because it's not similar to yours. Their game might be a little bit similar. It might look a little bit similar, but in the eyes of the consumer, it's not. There's validation with them that you don't have. So you want to identify games that are similar, not only in a visual style to your game, but also within scope. How big is their team size? Is this their first game that they made? Try to find games that are more of a one-to-one match to your game. And sure, you might not see the biggest spikes in followers because those games didn't get a ton of attention, but you're going to find moments that even small first time ever created games, small wins that they had that you can implement within your game.
All right, last one. And then, folks, what I'm going to do is, as soon as Logan wraps up, I'm going to take the questions that are still sitting in chat and post them over into the post-session chat so we don't lose any of them. But, okay, last one. How could someone do this for tabletop and board games? Do you know of any similar site for those sales?
So not off the top of my head in terms of like a Steam database site. I would say look, especially if you're interested in doing a crowdfunding campaign for tabletop or board games, which you probably are, because that's a great site to do that. Look up Eco Partners, and the guy who runs Eco Partners is like a mastermind with tabletop and board games in terms of crowdfunding and earning money to create those things. But again, competitive analysis. This is not just a per game deal. You can do this with board games as well. Go to Google, search the similar board games, the ones that had success, and then identify what media sites covered those games. And not only what media sites covered those games, what did they cover? Was it an announcement that the board game existed? Was it an announcement of a Kickstarter campaign? Document all of that information and categorize it. So when you get to that part of the creation process of your tabletop/board game, you know exactly who to reach out to.
All right. So we're going to close this one down. We'll be back in about 2 minutes. Dan's got our next guest lined up. But in the meantime, pop over to the Discord server, and I've got, looks like we're only short like 2 questions, but Logan will be there to answer more stuff. And if you feel like picking on Chris Zukowski and poking around with him, you will find him on the right side of the screen under guest of the show. So be sure to tag him and suck his brain into it as well. Anyway,
100%.
That's it, everybody. Thank you. We'll be back in just a minute.